The mirror match. When your pet deck suddenly becomes meta, you have to think a lot more about that. Unchained players can relate. And due to that, I've collected interactions, tips and a playstyle that is good to perform in general in the mirror match. I will show you everything. Let's talk. First, I want to clarify one thing. Yu-Gi-Oh! In general is a game of variance. That means no matter how good or bad you are, if you have only one starter and your opponent has 3 non-engine, 3 hand traps, it doesn't matter, you will lose regardless. But after a lot of games, the better player will come out on top more often than not. And that's also the reason why you see the same faces always topping events. And if you want to come out as the better player more often than not in the mirror match, you already have the first big stone set. You know your own weaknesses. The mirror match in a fair and neutral game state is actually very technical and skill intensive. Let's stop the yapping. How do you use your hand traps in the mirror match? Well, that's difficult to answer since YUBEL doesn't have a branded fusion card that you can just Ash or Imperm and suddenly they cannot play anymore. It's quite the opposite. It's like back in the days with Unchained. Sometimes 1 or 2 hand traps are good enough, but if the hand is right, or at least not bad, the YUBEL player can just play through a lot of hand traps in a breeze. Especially if they can go early into Phantom of YUBEL. At this point it's just not possible to stop them with hand traps at least. But I still have some advice, and I do think spots where I think it's at least worth a shot to hand trap. And I know a lot of the stuff I'm going to say may sound self-explanatory for YUBEL players. But please keep in mind that I get a lot of messages from people that return to the TCG that are new in general, or they are just not that good, and everything is fine with all of that. And that is the whole reason why I will include some stuff where you think to yourself, okay, as a YUBEL player everyone should know that, but some just don't. My first advice is do not hand trap Beckoning Beast. I don't know who was the first to put out the rumor that Beckoning Beast is a choke point, but it's really not. Yes, it generates a lot of value, and especially in the following turns it can create a snowball effect of resources that is just unstoppable, but it's not a starter. Even with Summon Sorceress and Close Sky, the 2 monsters that transform Beckoning Beast into full combo, I still don't think it's right to hand trap Beckoning Beast, it's just better to wait. But why do I say that? Well, we have a lot of cards, even though a lot of people seem to not know that can extend past a negated Beckoning Beast. For example, Grave Skirmer, we play 3 of that, Opening, we play 3 of that, Nightmare Throne, we play 3 of that, and even Nightmare Pain in some circumstances, and Shavara. All of those cards, they invalidate the hand trap on Beckoning Beast almost entirely. So if you use any hand trap on Beckoning Beast and the opponent has one extender, even 1-for-1 on terraforming, you are cooked, my guy. Just wait and let your opponent use way more cards. For example, if they go into Beckoning Beast, search Opening, and with Opening they go into another Beckoning Beast, and then they go into Yama, then you have to Imperm or Veiler the Yama, since if you do not, the Shavara can dodge the potential Imperm on Spirit. But even if they do that and force you to Imperm the Yama by doing this, it's way more worth it to stop the Yama than to stop the Beckoning Beast. Normally I would recommend you to just wait for Spirit, but there are a few problems with that. If you Imperm Spirit and they have Skirmer in hand or Nightmare Pain, the Imperm doesn't do anything. If the Imperm hits and they don't have Nightmare Pain or Skirmer, it's really good, so it's a really big gamble again. So the high risk, high reward play would be to Imperm the Spirit, but I would maybe recommend you to, even if they do not open a second Beckoning Beast or don't want to extra normal summon it, to wait for Yama, because that is the only Imperm or target negation target YUBEL can't really protect or substitute. And because the YUBEL deck can't protect Yama, you cut them off from getting access to Shavara, the best doggy, and that hurts quite a bit. Don't get me wrong though, YUBEL can still put up a pretty good board, but you limited their resources and endboard capabilities guaranteed. That is something that the Imperm doesn't provide on any other target, it's always a gamble otherwise. Second advice, do not use Imperm or target negation on Samsara, for basically the same reason. Any extender goes full combo through that. What you can use maybe is Ash on Samsara, but there may be another better target for that. The second good target to Ash is Nightmare Pain. What I would Ash between them is what comes first. If they start with Samsara, I would Ash that. If they go first into Nightmare Pain because they had it in hand, I would just Ash that. This is the stuff I would hand trap in general, but like I mentioned, it's very difficult to hand trap them because A, they can just have every starter in hand and then it doesn't really matter, or B, they can go early into Phantom of YUBEL, and if they do that, you are cooked. Please do not use Nib in the mirror match. Nib is only good if the opponent is a bozo, which is fine to be since everyone has to start somewhere. But if you play against a good YUBEL player and they have combo in any way, literally any way, there isn't a combo that dies to Nib, you literally just hand loop yourself. Thanks to Phantom of YUBEL. Droll is weird. Sometimes it's very good, but sometimes it feels like it doesn't do anything. It's risky too, since there are 2-card combinations where you first begin with Nightmare Throne, and you use Nightmare Throne to pop Spirit, to then special the YUBEL to the field, and then you can go into Phantom without using your normal summon or playing into Droll. It doesn't even has to be Throne. Even Squirmer in a 2-card combination can put up a pretty good board under Droll. Droll is really good though. If you pair it with other hand traps, then it really shines and can be devastating. So if you are in the mirror match and you have Droll in the side deck, I would recommend you to maybe maximize on the hand traps and try to put Droll in it. It at least does something. Bystials are kinda the same. I mean, the YUBEL deck isn't really reliant on the graveyard. The best target to Bystial is probably Squirmer or one of the Unchained cards. Just keep in mind that Bystials will not stop YUBEL, okay? Even if you hit 1 or 2 Bystials, the YUBEL endboard can still be very scary, but at least you took some resources and you have board presence. Better than Nib every time. To conclude the hand trap segment, I do think the best hand traps are Ash, Veiler, Imperm, target negation in general, and even stuff like Ghost Ogre on Nightmare Pain. In general, really luckily for us, but sadly in the mirror match, there isn't one hand trap to shut YUBEL completely off. Even Shifter doesn't do that. Boardbreaker. But before I start with that, a funny story. You know, yesterday I played locals against a Ritual Beast player who seemed chill, he seemed very nice, he talked a lot and he was friendly. Until he started to lose. After the match he got kinda salty. By the way, he shifted me every time and put Colossus on the board every time he had the ability to do so. Ritual Beast seems fun. Anyways, he lost the match and he started with the typical talk like, if I had XXX card, I would have won. If I had that. Like, you know the drill. And normally I don't really care about that type of talk. I just say, yes, you are right, maybe if you had those cards, blah blah blah. In general, I'm very chill to play against. I'm nice if you are nice to me, that's what I want to say. But I just don't like people who get their ego hurt by losing at locals and then get upset with you, even though you just played the game. Like, bro. It's locals. And if you are like that to me, I will call you out on that crap. Simple as that. It costs literally nothing to just be normal. He then continued his rant. He tried to tell me that YUBEL dies very heavily to Boardbreaker, and I tried to explain friendly because I wanted to help him for the future that isn't the case. I just told him no, that's not right. We have an Omni Negate, we have Rage in the graveyard and the Princess in the graveyard, we have a lot of hand traps and we have monsters that float if you destroy them. Then he low-key started to become very angry. I mean, he didn't want to admit that. I literally told him to his face, don't be salty bro, it's just locals. But everyone even after the match said to me, bro, he was salty. And he tried to explain the deck to me, the YUBEL deck to me, like I'm not playing it since Phantom Nightmare. And if you ever talked to me in the comment section or even in real life about the deck, you know that I'm very open to talk about it and even take criticism. But to be honest, I will not listen to a person that haven't touched YUBEL like ever and is just salty because he lost at locals. He told me again if I had that specific card and that specific card and full combo, blah blah blah. You probably know someone like him in person. I just at this point was very annoyed and didn't want to talk with him anymore. Sorry, I had to rant about that, some people are just insufferable. To filter some stuff out and transition into the topic. Boardbreakers are very weird. Evenly is kinda awkward since you are fighting an Omni Negate, so you basically first have to bait the Omni Negate while your field stays clear. And even if it resolves, you still have to fight either a Phantom of YUBEL or Rage into SP, which both are really good. And considering that you have to use 3 cards evenly, a card to bait the Omni Negate and a card to combo, you better pray to the gods that you haven't used any hand trap or card otherwise. Because if you are low on cards, one Phantom or Rage in combination with 1 or 2 hand traps still loses you the game. So I will not recommend evenly in the mirror match at all. I mean, you can still believe a lie like the dude at locals, but the results won't be good. Lightningstorm and Featherduster are okay. It puts the YUBEL player in a dangerous spot. Do they risk to negate it and run into talents or evenly, or do they let that go through? Personally, if my opponent is Tempai, I try to negate the back row removal as often as I can, but against any other matchup, especially post-side, I'm not negating that. I mean, yeah, if you want, you can get rid of the Nightmare Pain and maybe 1 or 2 Imperms, but the board, even without the back row, is still good enough that you just lose. So in short, yes, Lightningstorm and Featherduster are good cards against YUBEL. I mean, you get rid of Nightmare Pain, maybe follow up in form of opening, and maybe even Imperm, but you still need a lot more gas after that. Super polymerization, our beloved topic. I mean, as an interruption, it's broken. As a board breaker, no. Probably even worse than evenly. If the YUBEL player knows what he's doing, he will not end on a normal YUBEL form, only on Phantom, and you can't even use Phantom as fusion material. And oftentimes the other monsters on the board are Varudras and one fire monster, so you can't even poly them. So even if you go into a YUBEL and you want to fuse the whole board away, you have to discard a card, use your own monster, and you don't even get rid of Phantom or Rage in the graveyard. So it's not very good. Dark Ruler or Droplet, probably the best ones out of all the other Boardbreaker. I mean, Droplet is kinda expensive considering you still have to face off the Princess and Rage in the graveyard, but you at least have a fighting chance. The most efficient is probably Dark Ruler, but the problem is that you still have to face the graveyard interactions like I mentioned, and you can't go for lethal, which means you have to clear the whole board and the monsters float, and if you destroy the Xyz, they can pop one of your cards, while putting up a board yourself that is strong enough that the other YUBEL player can't play in the following turn. That's highly unlikely. Don't forget, Handtraps are still a thing, and the other YUBEL player can immediately go into Phantom because they have enough resources for that in the graveyard. It's very difficult to win the game via Dark Ruler. But I mean, after explaining everything, the dude at locals told me that Boardbreaker are really good against YUBEL, even though he never touched YUBEL in his life, so he has to be right. No, he's not. Some nice interactions you have to know. We have some very specific stuff. I'm talking about float effects, changing monster effects to destroy YUBELs, foolishing one math mech to special... wrong effect, sorry. And all of them are good, but you have to be careful. Phantom and Samsara, for example, while similar, have a drastic difference in the mirror match. Phantom, for example, specifically changes the effect to your opponent destroys one YUBEL, so if you activate Phantom, you are the one destroying YUBEL. Samsara is different, because Samsara specifically says, okay, you can destroy one YUBEL on the field, so your opponent can, in theory, use the changed effect to destroy his own YUBEL. So be careful, if you want to use Samsara, try to do it before the opponent gets access to YUBEL. How to play? We have to keep a few things in mind while playing the mirror match. While Superpoly, in my opinion, isn't really good currently, and as far as the topping lists currently go, no one is really playing it, there will be that one person who will still play it. So, especially in the mirror match, always play like your opponent has Superpoly. Never end on a YUBEL monster that is not Phantom in the mirror match, and only use Phantom as your last resort if you don't have any other interruption. Because if you play into Superpoly, it will get a lot better. It's just a risk not worth taking, and if you go second, I know it's difficult sometimes, but if you have the possibility to do so, try to go into Chaos Angel, maybe even SP or any other form of back row removal before you commit into YUBEL. I know, like I said, it's difficult, but if you can, try that. Only if you know your opponent is on Superpoly, otherwise cards like SP are way too high commitment. Speaking of Chaos Angel is a really good resource in the mirror match. You can use its banish effect to get rid of Nightmare Pain to run over any other monster, or if they don't have access to Throne, you can banish YUBEL so they don't float. It's a really good card in the mirror. Don't be afraid to use your Phantom for that, because saving one Phantom won't help you at all if you don't live another turn. Access Code and Varudras are also really good board breaker in the mirror match. Don't forget that Varudra's damage step effect is happening in the damage step, so your opponent can't react with Phantom or Samsara, and you can, if needed, get rid of any problem card, even if you take a little damage maybe. Take use of that if needed. If you link away any monster with Anguish and then go into Access Code, Code. Don't forget that the on-summon effect of Access Code can't be responded to, so you can prevent float effects or maybe trigger effects in the graveyard just by linking away one specific monster with Access Code, and after the effect resolves, they have to react with some sort of interruption, maybe Imperm or then Superpoly to Access Code, because otherwise, if they don't, they cannot react to the other effect too, and you can pop one card for free on the field. Both are really great options in the mirror match. Other than that, you can basically just perform the normal combo if you go first. You don't really have to change something because the endbot is enough to basically beat any deck. Even YUBEL. If you want to go first and you want to side cards for going first, it gets very interesting because, for example, cards like Skill Drain, we can play under them, so in theory, our opponent should also be able to play under them. The difference is, we already have an established board, while our opponent has nothing, so I do think it's fine if you go first to still side Skill Drain. Just do not shotgun Skill Drain, because if you do that, you might unironically lose. After thinking a lot more about the mirror match, I'm kinda feeling bad for our opponents, especially after Phantom of YUBEL. It's very difficult to deal with YUBEL. I love it. See ya.